Okay, class. So now we are back. We're discussing another important concept. And this concept is entitled as the ventilation or the breathing. And when we talk about ventilation or the breathing, so what we say is that this is a physical process and this further has got inhalation in it and the exhalation in it. Or the other word of the inhalation is inspiration, and for the exhalation, we also use the word expiration. And by the inhalation, what we mean is that whenever you would take the air into your airways, this would be inhalation, and when you would take the air out of your airways, so this would be entitled as exhalation. And this is a physical process for a reason because it would involve the use of some muscles and the bones. And by the muscles, we have external and internal intercostal muscles and the muscles of the diaphragm. And by the bones, there would be the impact of the ribs bone and the sternum bone that would allow for this ventilation or the breathing process to be accomplished. But before I take you to the mechanisms of these, we must see that how come the ribs and the internal and external intercostal muscles and the diaphragm that we have got, they are positioned within your body. So if you were to see this simple diagram, so at the center of my chest cavity, I have got this central bone, and this central bone is termed as the sternum. And at the back of your body, you have got this vertebral column, or you have got this backbone with you. So the ribs at the back, they are joined to the backbone, and at the front, they are joined to this middle bone that we have, and this is the sternum with us. And when these ribs are collectively called, so they would be referred to as the rib cage. And we must be very much clear about the positioning of the muscles that we have in between the ribs. So here I have got the first rib, here I have got the second rib, and in between the ribs, we have these muscles with us, and these muscles they are referred to as the intercostal muscles. If I were to have the ribs and if I would see them from the front, so at the front we have got these external intercostal muscles lying, and when I would go to the back side, and over there the muscles that I would have, so they would be entitled as an intercostal muscles, we say. And from these external and the internal intercostal muscle, the word that should click in your mind is antagonistic. And by the word antagonistic pair of the muscle, what we mean is that when these external intercostal muscles, when they would be contracting, the internal intercostal muscles would be relaxing, and later the vice versa would be brought about by. Now, let me quickly take you that what is the mechanism when we are trying to be inhaling the air. So you have to be remembering is that when we try to be bringing the air into my airways, so we are actually taking the external air into the body. So from there you have to be remembering is that the external intercostal muscles that we have, they would contract, and the internal intercostal muscles that we have in between the ribs, so they would relax. And by that, I would raise my rib cage upward and outward. At the same time, the diaphragm that we have got that was actually lying at the bottom of the lungs, so this would be contracting and it would flatten up. So when this would flatten up, and we have already raised the rib cage upward and outward, so these lungs that we have, so they would be expanding, and when they would expand, so as a result of that, the pressure of the air inside of the lungs, it would decrease, and the pressure of the air that we have in the external air, it would increase, and as a result of that, the air would rush into your lungs. So this is what is constantly asked in your exams. If I were to take you into the points of this, so what you would tell your examiner that in inhalation or inspiration, we take the air into the body. And in that, the external intercostal muscles would contract, the internal intercostal muscles would relax. And when this would happen, the rib cage would move upward and outward. The diaphragm would contract and would flatten up, and they would allow the lungs to expand. And by that, the volume of the lungs would increase and the pressure of the thorax would decrease and the air pressure in the external environment would increase, and by that the air would rush into your airways. Now moving onward, we have to be understanding is that when we try to be exhaling the air out, then what we are required to do. So in exhalation process, what I need to do is to again create a difference of pressure. I would like to increase the pressure of air within the lungs, and I need to be reducing the pressure of air in the external air so that the air can rush out of my lungs. So now we would speak the opposite of it, that when we try to exhale the air out, so as a result, the external intercostal muscles that I have got on the outside of the ribs, so those external intercostal muscles now, they would relax and the internal intercostal muscles, they would contract. And as a result of that, the rib cage would move downwards and inwards. And at the same time, the diaphragm that was initially contracting in the inhalation process, now this would relax and this would become dome shaped again. And as a consequence of that, the lungs that we have got now they would be pushed upon, and as a result of that, when the lungs would contract, so the volume of the lungs would decrease and the pressure of the air inside the lungs would increase, and as a result of that, the air would rush out of your lungs. So by this, let me just take you to the exhalation process, that when we try to take the air out of the lungs or out of the airways or the thorax, so this is expiration. And in that, the external intercostal muscles, they would relax, internal intercostal muscles would contract, and by that, we would move the rib cage inward and downward. And the diaphragm, we would compel it to relax and be becoming the dome shaped again. And this would decrease the volume of the air within the thorax or the lungs, and this would increase the pressure in the thorax. And by that, the pressure of the external air would decrease and the air pressure in the lungs would increase. And by that, the air would be expelled out of the lungs. So I hope you would be clear with this ventilation or the breathing process.